Hello there. My name is Randy Campora, and I'm the bass trombonist in the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra. And I also teach at the Peabody Conservatory of Music here in Baltimore. My wife Olga and I and our two sons are members of the Columbia First Ward in the Columbia, Maryland Stake. And the purpose of this video is just to give you some ideas and some experiences as a member of a bishopric or a music calling in your ward as to how to use the talents of your brass playing members in the services in the ward. I'm not trying to tell anybody how to do their calling. I've held callings like branch president and bishopric counselor and music coordinator and choir director and almost every other calling that exists in a ward, so I totally understand how things work. Just an opportunity here to share from my perspective as a ward member, as a leader, and a professional musician, some ideas. When we're talking about the brass family of instruments, we're talking about trumpet, French horn, tenor trombone, bass trombone, they're both trombones, and tuba. And any instrument that you can think of in the orchestra and most others strives to be able to play in a lyrical singing style that sounds like singing. And so any brass player really is always working on this type of thing as well as other instruments. And so the members of your ward are going to be at various levels of playing, but if they're able to achieve some basic level of this kind of song-like playing, then they'll be able to transform their playing into something that's going to be appropriate to sacrament meeting or other meetings in the church and in the chapel. I should just say that the Latter-day Saint chapels are a little bit logistically more challenging for a brass player, just for various different reasons. Brass players who are freelancers or professionals are used to going to other churches on certain occasions and playing concerts in an ensemble or as a soloist on things like Easter or Christmas. And usually those chapels in our Catholic and Protestant churches are larger, and they also have a more boomy and generous acoustic environment for the brass instruments. The Latter-day Saint chapel has a drier acoustic, and they're a little bit smaller, although they're not small, but they're a little bit smaller than a large-scale church that we would find in the rest of our communities. That's for a reason, because we have a lot of sound in our sacrament meetings from children and babies, and there's all kinds of things that happen in a sacrament meeting that need to be suppressed acoustically so we can hear the words. When a brass player plays in that environment, it's just a little bit more challenging because there's a little bit less acoustical help for your instrument. It's not a problem, it's just something to get used to if you're a professional or experienced musician. Also, Latter-day Saint chapels don't always have a lot of space for a brass player to set up, or a good place. In the space in front of the piano, to the side of the podium, there's a little area. There's an area behind maybe the pianist's back. There's the little area where the chorister would stand, and so forth. There's also an area in front of the clerk's table, down on the level of the audience. All those kind of things. So the brass player is going to have to figure out where they're going to sit or stand in order to be able to see their accompanist and to feel comfortable and be able to communicate with the other people that they're playing with. That takes a little bit of planning. The next thing I'd like to say is I have a huge respect for anybody who plays music on an instrument in sacrament meeting. It's really hard to do that. It's not a normal concert or recital situation where you come in, maybe you've warmed up on your instrument before the meeting started, and that's another issue where a brass player needs to have a warm-up to get the muscles going. And so they're going to have to either warm up at home and then come to the chapel, or they're going to have to find a classroom somewhere that's not being used, and they're not going to bother someone to warm up before the meeting in the chapel. They're going to have to find a place to put their case where kids aren't going to get to it and mess around with it. things like that, that are very different from a regular performing situation. And maybe the biggest challenge as a brass player, and why I really respect anybody who sings or plays an instrument in the meeting, is that it is a worship service and you're part of that service. You're not just a hired gun to come in and play a piece. You are part of the service. You're partaking the sacrament. You are sitting there with your family until the time comes when you pop up and grab your instrument with no warm-up or anything like that, and you just play. You might have just heard one of the world's greatest sacrament talks, and that may have affected you, and you may have felt the Spirit, and you may be a little weepy, who knows? And that's very difficult to play an instrument or to sing when that situation arises. So for many reasons, it's not easy to do. And for that reason, I haven't done it really all that much over my life. I've done it sometimes, but not on a constant basis. That's a little wimpy, it's a little selfish, but it's difficult. Just here are some ideas that you can use in your ward. Consider using brass instruments as a prelude before the music starts. We've done that with some members of our ward. We've had a trombone quartet, and we played hymn and spiritual and very nice singing type music 10 to 15 minutes before the sacrament meeting has started. We set up on the floor right in front of the clerk's table where there was enough space for us, and it was interesting that the members came into the chapel and they realized, ooh, this is something different. Maybe we should quiet down and listen to what's going on. And the kids kind of paid attention and that sort of thing. And that was easier for us too, because it was easier for us to warm up and set up before the meeting started. And then we were finished by the time the meeting opened. So that's a possibility too. For special occasions like Easter and Christmas, you might have brass players playing along with some of the congregational hymns, and in a respectful way that doubles the hymn singing parts with maybe some ornamentation that's not too flashy, but it just adds a little bit of fun and excitement and just a little bit of a spiritual musical thrill on those special occasions. I've done that before. Also, I would suggest that you think about the use of the organ in your meetings. If you can find someone in your ward or stake who is a talented organ player and knows enough about the organ to be able to create different sounds and different sound levels with the organ, that the typical digital electronic organ that most Latter-day Saint chapels have, this is actually a really good pairing for brass. Organ and brass is a very traditional combination going back centuries. And it gives the brass player a little bit of sound cushion to blend with. The piano also works just fine. But in my experience, it's nice to play with the organ in church. It feels like you're playing with another group as opposed to just by yourself. Also, just something I learned as a music coordinator some years ago is that many organists that are called on a ward level don't really know how to work that organ. It's a complicated instrument. It's a sophisticated computerized instrument, and many organists just don't have the ability to learn how that instrument works. And you open up the manual that is there for the organ, and it's like reading a computer textbook. It's very difficult. If you can find someone in your ward, in your stake, even if it's a non-member who plays organ at a different church but also knows how to work with these electronic organs, you can bring that person in periodically for some little master classes to work with the organists in your stake or your ward and help them and teach them how to use all the capabilities of the organ, and they'll be able to use that not only just on solo pieces but during the hymns as well, and it really enhances the beauty of the music in your ward. That's a suggestion that I would have. I would also say, as a bishopric member, if you find all of this music stuff just kind of complicated, and man, I have a lot of other things I need to be working on anyway, maybe you can use your music coordinator or your choir director to do this kind of legwork, to talk with the members and what kind of things they might want to play, If there's any question as to whether it would be appropriate or sound good in sacrament meeting, then your music coordinator, choir director can listen to that person and just talk to them, make some suggestions, make some plans, that kind of thing. And you don't have to do the legwork if you have someone that you trust in those callings. The other suggestion is to use musical solos in other meetings in the church besides sacrament meeting. Could be youth meetings during the week, could be Relief Society meetings, could be ward or stake priesthood meetings that happen on Sunday nights. All of those meetings can be enhanced by people playing solos on brass instruments or other instruments in that setting as well. I once was invited to play at a Christmas dinner for the Relief Society. I believe it was on a Saturday night, or I don't know if it was during the week, but it was in the gymnasium, and they had a dinner, then they had a presentation, they had a couple of people come play, and it was really fun and it was really beautiful. It was very spiritual. Those are just some ideas as a brass player that I wanted to offer that might be of help. Like I said, it comes down to every person who plays an instrument is trying to develop that talent to be able to sound like a beautiful singer, whether it's an opera singer or just a regular amateur singer. We're all trying to do that, and that's the type of playing that we're basically going to be going after as a brass player in the sacrament meeting. And I wish you good luck, and thank you for listening to this, and I'll look forward to lots of music in our meetings going forward. But just remember, it's not easy. And in closing, I'll tell you, I invented Latter-day Saint Chapel applause. Whenever anyone gives a solo in my ward, I give them the silent applause. I call this Mormon chapel applause. It doesn't make any sound, and it expresses my deep gratitude and admiration for anyone, like I say, who can get up in the middle of a meeting and play or sing beautifully and bring and keep the spirit in the chapel.